Hello, everybody. I guess we assume people are.
Hello, us and future people, and maybe someone.
That's
How about
true.
that?
We're mostly talking to future people at this point. And whoever filters in, whoever we claw away from the mainline stream. I'm Evan Abrams, joined as usual by Kyle Hamrick here on the hotline. How you doing, Kyle?
I'm doing good. And we have at least one person. Hello, Scott.
What's up? What is up with this large screen? I don't even know, man. It's
I mean,
we're
if you're referring to the difference between this and the Instagram Live, that is really hard to do anything meaningful on. And we have all this fancy setup for
yeah.
when we're doing the Adobe streams, and throwing all that out the window just feels kind of silly.
Yeah, it's the height of hubris to think that we're going to do the same show but on a cell phone. That's a bad idea. But don't worry, all of our examples today are formatted for cell phone, so
Right.
we're going to we're continuing to shoot ourselves in the foot here on the Motion Design Hotline. Anyway, if people don't know, this is an advice show where people ask us about After Effects and motion design problems. We try to solve them. This week we are actually being thematic because we are sandwiched between Canada Day in the past and Independence Day. Kyle, what's the day called in America?
I'm neither going to confirm nor deny. I want you to just guess.
Okay, Canada Day on the one side and America Day on the other side.
There you go. Perfect.
So I have to assume, even though the Americas is a much larger part of the world, we're still going to call it
Yeah,
America
we
Day.
own the name. Yeah.
Everyone has to pay licensing fees. Interesting. Great. So on here we're going to talk about two things that both countries have in common. That's right. It's a love of flags and fireworks. Which I think we both purchased from Mexico. Thank you, NAFTA.
Or Asia.
All of ours are Mexican fireworks. I'm 100% on that.
Okay.
There's a trailer down the road who can confirm. But also, I want to shout out, hey Scott, hey Brooke, hey Hanukkah, how's it going? And Oliver, what's going on? Yeah, I was gonna say I've not used this Behance for streaming on Behance at /EC Abrams, so we're making use of it again. And I don't know,
Had
Kyle,
to dust it off, and seems to be working fine.
That's true. We're also using a different mechanism for getting you on the show, Kyle. So there's that, and it's pretty good. It's only,
I was going to make a joke, and I decided against it.
You were going to do a kind of robot thing. Make it seem like the stream had frozen and freak me out.
Yep.
These are the types of pranks we can do now. So we have a bunch of examples. We split it up. I'm doing mostly flags. Kyle's going to do mostly fireworks. And we'll, I don't know, knock it back and forth. We'll determine the best way to make flags in After Effects, the best way to make fireworks.
Yeah, I think we should rank these.
Okay.
You find people that are watching can rank them, or we can rank them, or both.
Sure.
We can have a viewer score and a critic score.
Yeah, see how we're doing on the tomatometer. Oh, and apparently it's pretty good. So the sync is normal, and yeah, let us know if we fall out of sync. But I don't know. Do you have any other announcements we should get into, Kyle? Is there anything before we start the show proper?
Well, I'm going to assume that anybody watching this has at least some idea of what the show is. But like Evan said, we answer questions about After Effects. And we have, obviously, if you're watching, you can send us questions directly in the chat, and we will be responsive to those. The whole point of this show is to answer questions. Usually we take those and turn them into a show theme, but we also have a fine form that you can send us if you want to give us a little bit longer question. You can go to motiondesignhotline.com and send it.
Oh, that's true. We have a website now.
Yeah,
It's
we
good.
have
It's
a
good one.
website now. The finest website that has ever web sought.
Yeah. The scream I scrumped. Yes, it's a .com, so you know we mean business. All right, well let's get into it then, and we'll cross
All right.
the things we got.
Should we ask? How about this? Because we have people here, should we start with some fireworks or some flags?
Good news, people have already voted. Hanukkah's already voted for flags.
Okay, well, that's one vote, and by the time anyone else votes, we will have decided. So, flags it is.
Oh no, there's one more for fireworks.
Oh, it's on!
Oh, no, see,
You know, we didn't say that it was only one vote per person, so
that's right. So
we
whoever
make the
has...
rules here.
Oh, that's another one for fireworks. I see two uniques for fireworks. Kyle, we'll ping pong it back and forth. Hit me with some fireworks, baby.
Some Kyle guy just voted for flags.
Oh man.
All right. So sorry. You want me to go start? Go
Yeah,
first,
let's
Okay.
kick it off. Let's go.
All right.
Let's kick it off with a bang,
All right.
as
Kaboom.
opposed to a flutter.
So I came up with 3 different looks for fireworks.
Okay.
And the first is a fairly like clean, straightforward, kind of illustrative shape layer based look. And I think that these are fairly straightforward to build, but they leverage a couple of good techniques that I wanted to show off. So I can just kind of dive in and do that. And then I have some more organic ones. And then I made kind of a fun stop motion blueberry firework because that seemed like a fun thing to do. So we'll get into that later.
Yeah, a perfectly normal thing to get into.
Right, right. So you can see the finished one here. I'm just going to start from scratch. And great, this is square, so we'll call it new firework shapes. Great. We'll set this to 24. This is way longer than I need it to be, but okay. So I'm just going to start with a blank comp here.
People at home, call it whatever you want. People at home, we're not in charge of your naming conventions.
Yeah. I'm going to grab my pen tool here and just draw one straight line. Probably can't see that very well over the blue background here. Let's change that color to just more like this. Okay. Maybe brighter color there. All right. So let's just open up this shape layer here. I don't need a fill, so I can just go ahead and delete that. I'm going to crank up the stroke width so that I actually have some stroke to work with. Let's maybe make that path just a little bit longer here. Something to work with. And then this whole thing is just based on one little stroke. So let's add, thanks autosave. Let's add a trim paths to this. And we'll do a little trick that I love, which is set both the start and end to 0. Turn on some keyframes, go up like, I don't know, about 12 frames here. Set them both to 100. And then let's just move the start over a little bit and then kind of start massaging things. Let's see how this feels. Okay, getting there. Let's make that a little bit longer before it sweeps back off. Pretty good. So I'll hit F9 to easy ease those, and we can kind of grab these and make them a little more crunchy here. Let's just see how this is feeling. Okay, great. Love it. That's the basis of everything we're about to do here. Let's go ahead and turn the cap round. And I'm pretty happy with all that. Let's take advantage of some of these extra stroke things. Maybe get a little bit of taper going on. And widen that back out a little bit. And then I really like playing with this wave. So let's kind of give it a little bit of waviness here. That's much more dynamic, isn't it? Yeah.
Right,
maybe turn up that...
So, and the wave is like calculated like from one end to the other, right? So it gets this kind of like squeeshing of the wave, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I'll make that just a touch fatter here. Oh, so you can see I have a nice...
People are calling out for more sound effects.
Oh, okay. Well, right now it's more like a laser beam. Ew.
There we go.
Cool. Okay, so we have these 2 keyframes are going to drive the whole animation here, right? So let's add a repeater. And so now we're going to take advantage of that. Let's say we want maybe 8 copies. And instead of having them transform horizontally, we're going to transform them around a circle, okay? And I could math this out, but I'm going to take advantage of a real easy thing. Say 360 divided by whatever that copies number is. And now we can kind of easily play around and make something that's a little bit bigger. And voila, we have a pretty quick and easy firework, right? So I think the best thing here is maybe making a second copy. Let's open this up and scrub the color. If you hold Alt or Option, you can scrub right and left and change the hue on a color picker there.
Oh.
I'm just going to bump this over a couple frames and pew, there we go. Handy dandy firework.
Nice.
I'm going to take just a second here, and because of the way that I'm going to work with this, I'm going to just make a really quick little rig. So let's take the stroke width and rig that to there. And let's take the, what do I want? The copies. And we'll rig that to that one. And that should be it. So I need the color, the stroke width, the copies, and I'm going to hit SS, show selected. And then I just need the color on this one. And I'm going to make this into a quick little essential graphics thing. So I'm going to grab those properties, and I could name them if I cared a little bit more. And now I have this little firework template that I can drop into another comp. So if I take that, drop it in here, maybe size this down a little bit, move it over. Okay, so I have one firework there. I can make a duplicate here. And if you're not using essential properties, I feel sad for you because you're about to see why they're so neat. Because I'm using the same template right there, and I just created a completely different version of it, right? I'll just offset the timing a little bit here. And then what I thought looked really nice on the sort of bigger version of this was then again making duplicates of these, maybe offsetting those a couple frames and changing some of these. So maybe we'll make this 8 and a little bit thinner, and then we'll duplicate this one, move it over a little bit, and change some of those essential properties again on there, make it a little thicker, maybe do more on that one. And so you can really add a whole lot of complexity to your fireworks really quickly there. Comp is far too long. And of course, you know, if you want to draw the little trails coming up to these before they explode, feel free. But this seemed like a great little example of ways that essential properties can really make something like this much more dynamic and interesting, because it's very easy to kind of just keep making variations on it.
Yeah, they're very graphical, right? Like these are very like I don't know, like you could, if you took the wave out and you really smooth them out, they could really be, I don't know, almost like retro type type of graphics.
Yeah,
like
totally.
Whatever you style the little individual thing into, yeah, you can make them more conical. Yeah, it's yeah,
very flexible, especially since you can just like crank those copies around to kind of make all these different variations and stuff. You could feed yourself the keyframes out here even, and you know, start playing with the timing of different ones.
True. Umacorn's got a question in the chat. Are you using any shortcuts to offset the pre-comps? Like, are you bumping those with keystrokes or anything?
I probably did. So you can totally just drag them around. But if you hold Alt or Option and use page up, page down, you can bump things around by one frame. Or if you do Alt or Option plus Shift plus page up, page down, you can move them by 10 frames at a time.
For those who need a quick bump to their layers around. I think it works for keyframes too, right? Yeah.
So it does. Let me get those. So keyframes, if you hold Alt or Option and use page up, page down, it moves the layer still. But if you use the left and right arrow keys, you can move individual keyframes that way. And then again, Shift to move by 10.
Yeah. All these thousands of keyboard things to lock into your brains.
Yeah. And you just do them because you take them for granted. You don't even think. Do you want to bounce back and forth with examples here?
Let's do it. Okay. Let me entreat you with the simplest form of flag, right? Let's start at the beginning. Simple flag. Wave warp, right? So we take our flag, right? We put it into a thing, put it into a comp.
A thing. Yep.
You know, a thing, and then just scale it down marginally, right? I want to make sure that I've got space around this thing. It's going to
Mhm.
attach to the flag over here on this side, so that when you see that as deployed here, we're literally just applying wave warp to it, right, and letting it go. I've pinned the left edge, which makes this stable. So if this is locked to something, that's good, right? We nailed it,
That's
right?
the reason why wave warp is nice, because you do have that pinning that you can do.
Yeah, and if you didn't pin it, it would look like this, which means that the flag is somehow fluttering. But if this was on a string, right, if this was actually on a flagpole, it would be attached by a rope to the pole, so it would actually be doing this. But we don't really need to worry about those things. We're just going to say pin it to the left edge. Now, of course, you're probably thinking, Evan, that's pretty unsatisfying / I don't like that, right? It's not particularly realistic, right? We can mess with the wave width and the wave height and really kind of jazz this thing, right, as much as we'd like. We could try to get the quality of this a little bit higher, but you know, we're really kind of maxed out at this very normal, repeatable type of thing.
I think that would be very appropriate to go with my very graphical fireworks.
Right. Now, you could say, aha, but Evan, how about this? How about we just duplicate? I'm going to duplicate wave warp to get a second one.
Mhm.
Let's get maybe 20 and 500. So we're gonna combine two wave warps together, or maybe three of them together, so that their periods and whatever their frequencies overlap each other in different ways. Maybe this one's on a sine and this one's I mean, these are all going to cause bonkers things, because if you do like a square, but even square, right? Square is still creating one of these type of graphical
Mhm.
changes to the stuff as it pushes through. Now, okay, that's wave warp. We don't really need to spend a lot of time looking at this stuff, right? Let's go ahead and let's do one better. I can do you one better on this.
Only one better though. If you do two better, then you're disqualified.
We're into a whole other thing. So I'm going to bump us into what we would call a displacement map. Now, the displacement map effect, we're applying it to the exact same thing. We're going to start with that exact same thing that we came in here with, right? This is the base flag image. The flag is slightly smaller than the outward bounds, so that if we warp this thing, it's not going to hit its edges, as long as we give ourselves sort of enough padding. Either that, or you have to use the grow bounds effect,
Mhm.
right? But yeah, if we come back here to the displacement map, we love this effect. Displacement map, right? Think about your power rankings in your mind as for whether or not this is going to be a good one. But we are offsetting things horizontally and vertically using a map layer. And what's that map layer look like? Well, in this case, if I just set this thing back to normal, and we'll bring its opacity up, it looks kind of like this. And I'll just have to undo a bunch of stuff here. That what I've got is fractal noise. And fractal noise is both evolving over time and it's being offset. It's being pushed by. So it's moving on down the road, creating this kind of undulating cloud. Then, of course, I blur it out quite a lot because I want the wind to be kind of like that. And then I deploy a fill at 50% gray, which will allow me to make this part of the flag not move, right? Because if anything is 50% gray, it's not moving. We talked about this like last time. It was like a continuation of last
We
time
do,
we
but
talked.
honestly, I think it's one of those things that a lot of people don't get. So it's kind of good to repeat.
Oh, and of course, to answer people in the chat, I am from Canada. You can tell by my outrageous accent. And Kyle is from America. You'll notice that
Mhm.
we say a lot of words differently.
Like what?
I want to say like the word sorry. People or about.
Yes.
People like the word
yeah.
about.
About?
Yeah, Kyle says it more
Sorry?
like about. Whereas I say it more like sorry, like an O.
We'll just both use completely cartoonish versions of our country's accents.
That's right, soury. Whoa, that one kind of. And of course, if we were from Philadelphia, it would be a totally other situation. We'll not be delving into that. But Anyway, the point here is we're holding down this part, and I'm using a mask, and then within this, you can come into an effect, and you can say, "Hey, give me some compositing options on that," and that's going to allow us to basically say, "Hey, we're going to use this mask to be the place where that effect is happening," and that allows us to basically fill in that 50% gray wherever we want. Now, you might even do this with maybe you use a brightness contrast effect, right, to try to drop the contrast on somewhere. Like, there's a lot of methods to generate this. But once you have, we pipe that into the displacement map, and that's going to determine where the pixels be getting pushed. And we end up with this, I want to say, slightly more realistic movement, or at least it's more directed, right? Like we could make our displacement map out of anything. It could be made of a bunch of radio waves. It could be made of a specific shape that's rolling through, or a specific shape that is holding steady in there, right? But
Or just hypothetically, a stock
yeah,
clip of wind-blown fabric.
it's impossible to know. But but yeah, like what a weird thing to bring up, Kyle.
Yeah.
But this is giving us a thing we can control, right? Then I kind of went a little bit extra and said, you know what? I'm going to observe this. I'm going to use the track mat system to use that base flag, which remember is getting affected to flutter around as the track mat of that top layer. So that's where we can see this. Switch up the mode down to something like, I don't know, like an overlay, so that's going to be on that. Make sure that you've got the eyeball poked on of that, and then we get little brights and shadows on here as things are kind of going in big quotes up or down on this thing. I guess vertically and horizontally, and you can also really mess with like your vertical and horizontal numbers in here, right? So let's say if we do horizontal much less and this much more, right? Again, we're getting a lot more displacement out of this type of thing. But yeah, anyway, that's displacement map. Do I have one more? No, it's like a totally different category of thing when we go
Well,
into the next.
that's a good segue to some of my stuff. So
Okay, perfect. I'm
yeah,
gonna go back to Kyle's screen. Boop, boop.
I think that's real solid, and some good, like, straightforward ways to deal with flags. And as you can see here, I did something very similar. I kind of just threw this together because I knew this was very easy and something that could be explained quickly. And so it's basically what you just showed, except I used just a stock clip of some waving fabric. Um, and this is what the original looks like. I cranked up. Hang on, getting some. There we go. I cranked up the brightness here with some curves and just blurred it a little bit. Again, set to overlay. So exactly the method that you're using. Just using some blowing fabric already from Adobe Stock, whether it's real fabric or generated, saves you the trouble of having to create that. And I will say that this particular method, at least the way that I did it here, this isn't really intended to, say, give you like a totally realistic flag, but this is really great. Like if you need this to be a graphical background of a composition, for example, and you kind of want it to, where did I, here. So I could drop this into another composition, and especially if you want to maybe turn this into a 3D layer, and then you could do just a little bit of kind of a push in, a little bit of kind of offsetting here. You know, pretty quickly you can make kind of a nice thing, give that a little bit of a vignette. Good times, old school, like digital juice style.
Yeah.
Flag background.
I'm talking Memorial Day sale. I'm talking Veterans Day sale. I'm talking
exactly
every type of sale you require. This is your go-to for those.
Exactly. But you know what? I mean, it works, and it's easy to update. You can change the the look of it pretty easily. Obviously, it's not quite as flexible because you're still basing it on that footage, but then you have a nice realism there.
Yeah, and yeah, nothing moves like real flag like real flag. That's
yeah, exactly. So I took sort of that idea of using using footage, and I turned that into one of my fireworks demos here. This one's a little slower to preview, so let me see. I may need to knock the frame rate down a little bit here, but it's actually good that you can see it there. So I wondered, I was like, what if I take one of those pretty ubiquitous ink drop clips and turn that into a firework? Because I bet if I kaleidoscoped it just a little bit, it could be pretty fireworky and pretty cool. So let me kind of dive in here. This is the original clip that I grabbed just off Adobe Stock. And I did some time remapping on it because these are, typically filmed in very high frame rate, very super slow motion. And I wanted it to be very bursty. So I just used some time remapping keyframes here. And you can see I worked my curves just a little bit. So it's sort of boom, like that. And then I threw a couple of effects on here just to kind of make this a little easier to work with so that I would have white here as my actual working element. And then I just stacked some stuff up here. Here's an adjustment layer. So you can see I kind of repositioned the layer a little bit so it was coming more from the center. Mirrored this, kaleidoscoped it one more time, and then we get this nice explosion there, right? Sorry, this new streaming program I think is eating up more of my CPU brain than usual. I can still hear you, fortunately, but I'm a little freezy over here.
I know. I think you really slowed down in the.
Yeah. I may take it easy on the previewing on this one.
Right.
I'm trying to regain control of it here. So I can show you what I'm doing. 1 second. After Effects is not being especially responsive.
Well, don't worry, Kyle. I've got like 7 more examples to get through.
Probably doesn't help that I have the beta open in my other window.
That's true.
Yeah. Here we go.
We
okay.
Now
so I took that, and obviously you should be able to see this again. Yeah. And obviously this looks cool and kind of explosion-y, but it goes all the way to the edge right away, right? So I took another sort of ink drop that goes like this and used that as my mat to kind of reveal the edges here and kind of like crunch everything in. Again, I kind of mirrored that so that I would get something that was a little more circular. Mirrored once, mirrored twice. And then I took one more version of that. I'll call out, I have this set to one of these very confusing matte blending modes down here, where you can use either the Luma or Alpha of a layer to cut everything out below it, or do the reverse of that. So I'm using Silhouette Luma to use the white and black values of this clip to affect what's visible on everything below it. And then I duplicated that clip, played with the scale and the time remap a little bit, offset it a few frames, and used the opposite. So now it's stenciling based on the Luma, the white and black value. Right. And so that then kind of crunches the middle back out and eventually makes everything disappear. And so you can see when we kind of use this out here, I just used a handful of effects on these clips. Some fills. On one of them, I used a set matte so that it's then using its own white and black values to kind of determine its visibility, and just kind of played with the timing and stuff until I was happy with that. But I thought that was a nice way to make something that's, again, very stylized, but in kind of a different, almost kind of painterly sort of way.
Well, I was going to say, it looks a lot more like, it's a lot more international. This is like those like smoke bombs that you see going off, right? It's, I don't know, a kinder, gentler firework.
Yeah, well, I tried to kind of interpret it like that. We all know what your standard like boomy firework looks like, so let's do something fun and interesting.
If we've learned anything from rewatching Spider-Verse many, many times, like this has kind of like Gwen Stacy look, right, of that world that's a lot more pasteled.
But I thought this was fun too. Like a lot of these kinds of ink drop clips, or you can find those colored dust explosion clips. Like, take advantage of that stuff and then stylize it, rather than creating everything from scratch. A lot of times you can make some really neat stuff by just mirroring those a couple times or something, and
Yeah.
take advantage of a real explosion.
A lot of mixing, a lot of remixing.
Yeah,
Kyle, would you like to see a bad explosion?
I would.
All right. You know, in keeping with our theme, I thought, what if I made some cheap fireworks?
Yeah, love it. Perfect.
I'm nailing it. Pew! This is pretty close to the default of
Yeah.
making use of CC Particle World.
Well, and honestly, too, that's why like making fireworks like that is pretty straightforward. So I kind of wanted to do something that was different.
Yeah, I was like, all right, what are the fewest number of clicks I can use to
Mhm.
get here? And here's how to do it. So this is like, all right, if we just turn this off, you start with a new solid. You get yourself CC Particle World, and already you know what? Hey, that looks that looks kind of like a firework already,
Yeah,
right?
pretty close.
And then we're just gonna take we're gonna take that producer, we're gonna push it way back, right? And then really what we want to do is we just want to keyframe our birth rate. So birth rate 0 here, set a keyframe, open this up. I'm gonna go ahead a couple of frames, say 50, and then
This
back
is
down.
this is one of those older effects that like by default it has sort of a very technical view that you start in, but that doesn't mean that
Yeah.
that's what it's actually making.
Yeah, it looks a little bit bonkers actually when you open it up. But like, so we're ramping up, and this is like it's belching, like it's like bleh, like putting the fireworks out. So maybe you pinch that together like that. Anyway, the number of individual streaks that are coming out, like this could even be as low as 20, right? So like a very small number. But then so much of this is down to, let's close down the producer, open up the physics. Let's get the velocity going big. Boom.
Yeah.
I want to push out like 20, right? Let's go into hyperspace with this. But then we're going to do the reverse, right? We're going to crank the resistance on it. So that is going to control how far out this can even spread. So the resistance is going to get cranked up.
How soupy is the air that this is shooting into?
Exactly. And then we can even, like, you can crank up the gravity if you want it to descend a little bit more. But that's pretty much it. Like, that is it. This is as far as I really needed to go on it. I changed some of the particles, but leave it as line because it's just a tracer line. But then, I came down to like explosive is probably the closest.
Mhm.
Directional axis, no. Cone axis, definitely no. Jet sideways, like a lot of these things are like not appropriate for what like this is, right? Because this is
Right.
like a blast out. But what about this? Fractal Omni creates a more fractalized type of push outwards, and then there's Fractal Uni, which is going to be
Which that last one is probably good. Those are good for trying to replicate like more realistic explosions. But since fireworks are designed to be circular, more often than not.
yeah, the a good pure firework,
Right.
looks like that. But in the in my little, because I can't stop myself from just adding more and more layers of stuff, keyframing the producer going up and then exploding like that, and like I don't know, we're not going too far off of the baseline with CC Particle World, but we're getting some stuff.
But I think that's a good reminder that you can get pretty decent stuff pretty quickly. And there are certainly more advanced particle generators. I forget if this one can do this, but where you can then be producing particles off of the particles that got created originally, and that's how you get the little trails, for example.
Yeah, things like Trapcode Particular, right? That has particles
Right.
that emit particles. I think it's Particle Playground that can do like,
I think that can do it, yes.
which is such a can of worms. People should watch Jake Bartlett's series where he goes through all the effects if you really want to get deep into
Yeah.
that really overlooked because it's two-dimensional particles, right? And that's not usually what you want, right?
Mhm.
But you can do really weird and wild things with it. I don't know. Should I get into more flags? Let's
Yeah, why
pivot.
don't you do another flag? I have
Okay.
my kind of stop motiony example, but that'll be my last one,
Okay.
unless we get into
So,
questions or something. So.
I don't know. Let's see. Graphic designer on creative enhancement. Please help me grow. Please follow me and appreciate my work. Okay. Well, follow each other on here. If you see things you like them. Um,
I haven't seen any explicit questions though.
that's right. But make sure they're really explicit.
Explicit, yeah. Well, they can be. This is Motion Design Hotline After Dark.
I don't know if you can cuss on Behance, but we might. So, well, actually, Kyle, we are actually being simulcast onto Adobe Live. We're on the main feed, so
Oh well,
let's
there you go.
be on our best behavior. This is
Put
using.
on my tie.
So we're gonna switch into warping, right? Specifically, the family of things that are warping. Things are gonna get twisted. And in particular, all three of these examples are making use of something called Bezier warp. So Bezier warp, you apply it to something, you get all these wackadoo handles on here, and I have simply keyframed this. And you know what? I might as well
Keep
start
feeding
with
those manually, you maniac.
oh,
Those looked red. I smell some expressions.
don't worry, it's all above board. Let's start with the good old glory over here. I think it has the requisite number of stars. I didn't check.
How many do
I'm
you think are supposed to be there?
I want to say 50. That's a nice round
Again,
number.
I will neither confirm nor deny.
Do I know that America keeps its various territories off of its flag?
We do have several territories that get no graphical representation or pretty much any other kind of representation.
Hold on.
50 is the correct number on the flag.
Whoa. Oh, well, it's a toss up between that and 52, but I know that's weeks of the year, so not gonna trick me twice. Can I bring an SVG in? No? Come on now.
Nope.
Come on.
EPS you could, but
Okay.
not an SVG.
Can I just rename it to an EPS? Hold on. I'm trying to get the flag of Puerto Rico in here.
This is amusing because, like, if you asked me about Canadian history, for example, I
Yeah.
I could guess that there are, ballpark 15 territories.
What?
Is that what you call them? I mean, you don't call them states, right?
Provinces.
Regions,
They're
provinces. That's right. I was looking for the word. Um,
What?
I mean, we don't have to know about other countries' stuff. Americans in particular, because we collectively don't really care.
It's true. Miss a little, miss a lot, unless you're going there for vacation. All right, so I don't know.
Okay, well, I was pretty close there.
Yeah.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, 10 provinces, 3 territories. Yeah, we almost had Turks and Caicos, but we fumbled the ball. Anyway, here is they were once selling, I think. So here's a flag that I'm told belongs to America, and which still does not have representation, and we are going to apply Bezier warp to it. Bezier warp gives us these handles. We can bend the handles around. So I'm going to bend these ones over here into kind of an angle, right? Kind of a cool angle. But those are
It
ones
is
that
cool.
I don't want it to move anywhere, right? So this is, what is this one? This is the top left vertex. I'm not interested in moving that. I'm not interested in moving the left top tangent. Neither am I going to do the left bottom tangent nor the left bottom vertex. So those will remain the same. Everyone else I'm interested in changing a little bit. So I'm going to bump this down like this. Let's make like an S shape like this. All right. Go like that, and we'll move these, and there we go. So this is kind of a shape that a flag could be, right? So we'll do that. Let's call this a pose. This is one pose of flag. Move ahead 30 frames, and I'll just stick these in a different pose. So let's contrapposto these things.
Kind of the reverse.
I wish I spoke Spanish better, or I would say what that is in Spanish, but I don't. So we're going to do that, and maybe I want to move these around like this, just so that they're all kind of going somewhere, right? They're all... Bop, 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 bop.
Yep.
Bop, bop, bop,
Here we go.
bop, bop. I don't know if it refreshes fast enough for that fun flag dancing to really happen. So I'm going to ease these, right? So it's going to go between them. All right, that's pretty nice. Now I'm going to loop them out in the ping-pongist fashion. So we're going to alt-click on the thing, alt-click on the stopwatch.
Back and forth between the two.
That's right. For those not familiar with the all-American game of ping pong. Or is it table tennis in America? I don't really know. I'm sure there was a Red Scare where they couldn't say ping pong, or they'd be thrown in jail for being a communist. This is one of the
I think those days have passed.
Oh, have they?
Well, it's very retro. Things come back into fashion sometimes.
That's true. It's cyclical. So here we have a dancing flag, right? This doesn't yet feel like wind, right? It doesn't feel windy because wind travels through a system in some way.
And not in a perfect loop?
Yeah, not usually. But we're still going to keep it kind of graphical, right? If we want to make some looping GIFs, right, we might make that happen. So I'm going to come to Window. I'm going to use the new extension of Curves from Friends of the Show Plug and Play. Use promo code Hotline 15 for 50% off a plug and play. This is a plugin now. If you've seen us use Flow, if you've seen us use Lazy, it's kind of like a combination of Flow plus Lazy, right? Because we can do sequencing. So I'm going to click it over into sequence mode, and I'm going to give myself maybe a 30 frame bump. With these keyframes selected, I hit it, and then it's going to push those keys in a wave. Now, check this out. Now we're undulating, baby, right? Because these things are getting pushed around in a wave, and depending on the order that you select them in, right? I really just want to get these in a wave. Now, the reason why something like Curves is really useful is because it takes a long time to brush these things around. But now I can just kind of select them in a different order, and then we'll brush them around, right? Like, the world is our oyster. Or maybe we're like, well, maybe not 30. Let's see what happens if we extend that out to like 40. And we see how that goes. And we're really just trying it out, right? And this lets you experiment around with it. Again, that's Hotline 15. Give Evan and Kyle money.
Hotline 15. I look at me messing it up already.
That's a Hotline 15.
Hotline 15.
Yeah. Okay. So this thing's like going, but there's a lot of different ways that you might make those things happen, right? So if we look at those other examples, another one that I tried was like, what if I just wiggle all of those? Well, it gets a little insane, but I've applied like a frequency and an amplitude slider and just linked our wiggelos to that. So maybe I make that a little bit faster, and now it's really getting blasted in the wind. Right?
Caffeinated. Yeah.
Well, it's like a gale force winds ripping through it, right? So you can do all kinds of stuff. And then this other one here in the middle is just a different kind of permutation of the way these are going. So instead of the shapes being contrappostoed, they are just a big up and a big down, and it creates this kind of wavy, flappy. If this were, say, laundry on a line, right? If this were pinned in multiple spots, the reason I wanted to show off Bezier Warp is that this allows us to control some points, to lock some points, and then to be variable with other points. So that's the idea, right? This is held. This is all over the place. Okay, let's keep the warp train going, Kyle. We got more.
Do it.
Let's continue the Vans Warp Tour to the next place. Well, I mean, I labeled them funny. Yeah, let's take a stop off.
Not ha-ha funny.
No. Oh, well. Let's take a stop to something completely different, actually, before we go. So, okay. all of those examples before were like, what if the flag is attached to a pole and then a force, i.e., wind, is enacting on the flag, right? Uh, but Kyle, did you know there's a fun other way to use flags?
What?
I know. It's news to me. You can actually pick up the pole and wave it around.
I don't believe you. Prove it.
Well, okay. Well, in this case, I have animated this pole, right? Imagine this is a flag pole and it's waggling around. And if we attached a flag to that, the part of the flag that is attached to the pole goes wherever the pole goes. The inertia of that movement is then continued on, it's transferred through the material of the flag until it hits the end, right? Now, in between there and there, there's a lot of other forces happening, but that's the idea, right? In a perfect no-gravity vacuum, if I waved a flag around...
Which Evan lives.
Yeah, that's where I live. I live in a vacuum. I live in the Dyson sphere, sponsored by Dyson, and that would like carve a flag, the path of the flag. So I thought, well, what if I just parent a rectangle to this other rectangle, and I use the echo effect on it? How does that look? Well, it kind of looks like a flag, right? It looks kind of flaggy. And then it's like, well, I don't have a lot of differentiation between the start and the end of the flag. Well, I can use the decay to make that happen, right? So we get this going on. Then I thought, well, what if I wanted to recolor that? Okay, well, that's when I come to Colorama, the number one plugin for recoloring things. Input phase, give me that alpha information, and now I have this kind of rainbowy flag that's moving around. It's pretty wackadoo. And then it's all about kind of honing the intensity and the decay to try to get this, specifically how you want. But I think that's an interesting kind of iridescent thing. Yeah. It doesn't help us do like swapping out the flag for whatever, because the flag is so a part of whatever the thing is, right? Now you could put sort of like a smear, right? You could just put a bunch of little colored dots here. We could do a kind of American flag with this, right? If the red and white dots.
Seems best when you're just doing colors, though.
Exactly. So if you need a super basic flag, there you go. A super normal basic flag. There we are. Okay. However, Kyle, let's crank our warping up to an obscene degree. All right.
I thought you said we weren't going to get obscene here.
Well, what can you do?
It is after dark somewhere.
That's right.
In the world.
It's after dark somewhere. So here is Old Glory writhing about in space like a terrifying snake.
Yep.
That's how flags are. Hi, welcome to Motion Design Hotline. We have all the subtlety of a 1500s political cartoon. So here, this is a pretty lively flag. I think we can all agree. This one is moving, grooving.
You know what? I have to disagree.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't have to agree.
Don't make assumptions.
That's the great thing about our political system. We can disagree and still be normies to each other. So what is happening in this thing, right? Well, it's a fairly convoluted looping of this one singular element. So our journey begins, as most things do in After Effects, with something very simple. A flag nonchalantly cruising on through this composition, right? Critically, takes like 3 seconds to roll through, right? It comes to the middle, it goes away. So that's our loop. That's what we're working with. We've got that much time for the flag to cross our field here. So with that in mind, we then roll back to this spot, and let's just isolate one of those. And instead of sort of rolling across in a straight line, it's getting wavy. That's because I've applied the warp. Classic effect warp. One of the OG effects that you will see in the world, warp. And we're using the wave style, not the flag style. If we use the flag style, it wouldn't look as nice for whatever reason. But when you apply this to stuff, it just kind of, you just bend it, right? We're just bending the thing. Um, the amount that you bend and the direction is determined by this wonderful number. You can choose which axis, but I am keyframing that so that you can see here, if we have a little look-see here, that we're basically going from a period of big bendiness to kind of no bendiness around here, right? More bendiness, no bendiness, and then back to the other way, right? So I'm inducing a kind of wave warp to this thing as it rolls through using the regular style warp, right? Duplicate that, push it in a few different directions, flip it around, and especially so that as it leaves one side of the screen, it's coming back on the other side. So it looks like we're bouncing into the edge, right? We're wrapping. We're wrapping around. Don't worry. Kyle and I will not wrap on this program. But
I was about to request it, but I guess we'll have to wait for another day.
My name is Evan, and I'm here to say I like animating flags in a major way.
It was just that easy to get you to rap.
It requires almost no prompting.
Boy.
So, oh dear. So you can see we're just duplicating these things, right, and making sure that their warpiness lines up such that we will be able to have something. No, don't open media encoder, but anyway, it shows up, it goes away. It's crisscrossing, it's doing that, right? Okay, let's go one level deeper. Here we take that object and then I'm just bending it using an arc, right? Using the warp arc style. And then we're kind of keyframing that arc over time. It's horizontal distortion that kind of makes one end seem like it's leading to the other one. And then we end up with this kind of undulating snake with a few turns of the warp. Now, all this stuff seems pretty complicated, but, we're kind of pressed for time. And if you really want to get your hands on this, Kyle, we have some work files for people they can enjoy.
We do.
What can I say? Always be pitching.
Yeah, I believe that you have the link right there in the description for this live stream, but we'll also be posting those up at Motion Design Hotline after this episode finishes, and we can link to that. And we'll have the show notes as well. If you want to look back and get notes, files from previous shows, those are available there as well.
Yeah, and kick us some dollars. It helps the show, helps keep the show going, keeps our file hosting people happy, so they don't break our legs. Anyway, so here's the flag undulating around, right? That's okay, right? It's flopping around in space, but usually these are attached to poles and people are waving those. So in this case, we spent all of our time getting the flag going right. So then we simply need to basically put a pole back where this should go. Ooh, there's a few ways we can do that,
folks.
Yeah, it's all good ideas. So here's the way I did it, right? I originally thought, well, I'll just move a pole to follow along. I'll just keyframe it one thing after the other, right? And that ended up looking really bad and weird because the movement of the pole that goes with that flag is like really kicking around. So instead, and this is a bonkers process to do, all right, let's see how can I lock this down. I took a null object and followed this corner. So the position was always following that corner, right? And then we had the rotation go so that the rotation of the null is always matching this edge. So we've got the position of the corner and the angle of the edge. We then use that. I parent that to the flag warped so that they don't get out of alignment with each other. But then you can link that in to hold on, show me the thing. There we go. We pump that into the anchor point of this particular layer, which causes it to stay still in space. We take the inverse of the rotation, which makes it stay still in rotation. So then it's just flapping back and forth, going nowhere. So if we remove its kind of hold on null 3, Ooh, not like that. Hold on. I think that's a none. So you can kind of see that it's kind of just flapping back and forth like this. But this has been stabilized, so then I can lock it to a pole and then wave the pole around.
Nice.
So this, when you do it like this, you can suddenly really experience this whipping, snapping action at the end of it, which I don't think is too bad. It is a little time remapping to try to smooth that a little bit, but I think it actually looks kind of funny and almost like stop motiony with its herky jerkiness. Like I have a real fondness for adventure games where you point and click around, and this is totally the type of asset that would be in that type of game, right? And
for the right context, it'd be very appropriate.
Well, it I don't know. This feels super charming to me. One thing that I will say about doing something like this is instead of trying to sort of take this loop here, right? And thinking of my loop going from this to this as the loop, I offset that margin. Which way do we go? This way. I offset like what the period is to be like this, so that if we do speed ramp into it, we're ramping into this state and this type of state, so that it's like turn the corner, turn the corner, so that we're just changing where that pause state is makes a huge difference. Okay, Kyle, that's enough of my voice. What have you got for us? Some more fireworks.
Well, you mentioned stop motion, which is actually a good segue into what I did here. So again, I was looking for something stylized. And I was like, well, like...
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but Scott is telling us about some wonderful NASCAR NFTs.
Yeah, well, he's saying, I think that's what you just created.
Oh, no, boy. Well, I'm more of an F1 fan.
Put it in one of those holographic card frames, and then you could sell that for some internet bucks.
Yes, indeed.
So I had the thought of strawberries and blueberries being... if you put those over, say, a white cutting board, you could make a really neat stop motion firework,
right?
That would do that. And I was like, well, stop motion sounds like a lot of work, and I'm not really doing anything in After Effects then, right?
Yeah.
I might time remap it a little bit or something, but that didn't feel like an After Effects thing. Yeah. Though I do have some real blueberries here, and maybe I'll try and do a stop motion thing tomorrow. We'll see.
If you don't eat them all, yes.
Right. But I thought, hey, I bet on Adobe stock, they might have some blueberry models. And look, it's right here for free. There we go. Yeah. So I downloaded that. I did have to bring it into a 3D program to separate them into 3 different objects.
Okay.
But then in the beta version of After Effects, where you can import 3D models directly and work with them directly, look what I have here. This is sort of a prep version here. And I have a little bit of an expression on these to just turn, but these are native 3D objects here in After Effects. I played with the lighting and stuff a little bit to kind of give them... Blueberries always, like I said, I've got some here. They always have a little bit of like, almost sort of a dusty look to them.
Yeah.
Like,
there's something hydrophobic about them, right? Like,
yeah.
Anyway.
The models themselves were very shiny. And so just by adding an ambient light enough, I really got that kind of, that look that I really liked.
Yeah, see, a shiny fruit we know to be like a cherry, right? Something that has a kind of lurid capacity to it. Blueberries are a very wholesome food.
So I'll show you real quick what I did here with the rotation, because I wanted to have a stop motion feel, but take advantage of the After Effects workflow. So what I did is I set it so each of these blueberries has basically a randomized initial orientation here. And then each of the actual single axis rotations are just evolving in time. And so that way they would always get this kind of, they'd be randomized in the way that they're turned, but then they'll all just turn in a consistent speed. which felt like, and this is a very low frame rate composition. It's 8 frames per second. So this felt like the right kind of vibe here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then what I did is, and you can see here, sometimes you saw the little colored boxes for a second. That was it kind of loading some of the models here. This is just a whole bunch of duplicates of those 3 blueberries, and they're just all manually keyframed here in position only. They're 3D objects, but I just did 2D position. And so I just keyframed them into, more or less what would make a little firework. And then I tried to kind of do the thing where the sparks disappear, very much like what you would create with a particle generator. Obviously, this is a much lower number of particles. So I could have done this with, 100 blueberries, but that seemed a little overkill for this. But it felt like a fun little way to kind of leverage, some of these new capabilities and that stop motion feel while still doing everything in a very After Effectsy way.
And if nothing else, people should be aware that there's a bunch of free models of food over at Adobe Stock.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep. It doesn't take every 3D file type yet, but if you can open these up in, Cinema 4D, which comes installed with After Effects, or you could use a program like Blender. You can use the Substance apps, which is actually what I did for these. You have a lot of options. You can turn these into GLBs or OBJs, or I think there might be one other file type that it takes right now. And you can just
those are like,
go ahead.
Those are the common ones, right? Those are like the they're very
GLB is a newer file format that holds a lot of information, and so that's why they're focusing on that.
Yeah,
but
and I think it's very web safe as well.
I think it might be.
Yeah.
But I'll just, kind of point out here, again, this is a fully native 3D object here. It's got all the material on it. I'm totally manipulating it in 3D space, just directly in After Effects. Quite nice.
Yeah. I really like the styling on those. Like, yeah, if this was like a commercial spot, right? I guess we'd want the blueberry to explode not into smaller blueberries, but into like currants or like a smaller type of fruit. Or something like that.
I'd like to do one of these. I got some strawberry models as well, and I considered like getting mixing the two, but it just I wasn't quite happy with the strawberry models I was able to find. And so I focused on the blueberries, but having multiple colors and textures in there would really, really step it up.
Some raspberries, some boysenberries, probably not gooseberries. Those are a tart berry. Okay.
Welcome to Berry Chat.
Yeah, sorry, I got lost in the sauce on those berries. So, was that a long walk for that? Yes, it was. So I didn't even hit cranberry on the way through, which really would have synced it. Anyway, Scott, let us know how our driving's going. Let's see. I've got a few more flags that we can get to. Okay. Prove it.
We don't have to stop. No one else is coming after us. So
you know what?
We can go forever.
No one's coming after us now. Okay, so what about trouble with flags? There's so many troubles with flags. Namely, the part when you flip a flag around, when you flip your flag, it kind of has to wrap around, right? These things need to be in some way three-dimensional if we really want to experience the fullness of flags. And so I was thinking, what effects do we have that do that, right? Well, one of them is CC cylinder. So if I just go ahead and kind of tamp this thing down a little bit, and we'll just solo this. This is just a rotating CC cylinder situation. Around and around it goes. Which you might say, Evan, that's not good. That's bad. But of course I've had to be pretty creative about what's on the cylinder. That'd be a little bit wackadoo. But from this humble beginning, a rotating cylinder, this thing wrapped on it, right? our old friend warp is back. We're going to put an
Oh,
arc style on it, right? So now it's not like it's going around in a circle. It's like conical, like making the cylinder more of a cone, right? So that's already more interesting, I hope. And it looks like someone's actually flapping it back and forth, right? They're undulating that thing. I've put a camera in here, and this camera is fairly flat. It's a 200 millimeter preset. So we're kind of compressing the scene a little bit with that, flattening this out so that it does feel a little bit more like we're going back and forth instead of around and around. Um, Now, what's the other thing we want to do? We wanted like a stick to ride on the side of this. If
you
you
need a
put
stick.
yeah, you need a flag stick. That's what they call it.
Yep.
Flag stick Arizona. And if you put the stick on the cylinder, eventually it flattens out to be non-existent,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So I went ahead and I just, I went where that would go using uh, shape layers here. I put a second warp on here to get a little bit more interesting, right? And
A lot of
then
keyframes, sir.
look, I have a lot of time on my hands these days, but it's not really that onerous, right? You just go five frames at a time, and then
Right.
between those, and we're really only moving 2 points, so it actually goes by pretty quickly. So it's not the end of the world, but in the end, you can get something a little bit wackadoo like this. Um, and so they're really, really bouncing around and having a good time. This would be suitable for like a GIF or some kind of
Yeah.
a thing, right? And of course,
Maybe a little stretchy in parts, but that could be a good look sometimes.
exactly. Now, I've exhausted what my brain could think about flags wise
Oh boy.
vis-a-vis After Effects. So I'll take any opportunity to do more practice in Cinema 4D, right? Which I don't get to do often, right? So let's take a brief sojourn into our favorite
To a whole new dimension.
the third dimension. Okay, I have to remember where I put these files. But remember,
Probably in Cinema 4D.
yeah, I mean they got to be in here somewhere, right? I just got to shake them loose. No, I moved them around because we were uploading the files to the servers so people
Oh
could download the
yes.
files.
This is the price of sharing our files with you fine people.
And the real price is really whatever you want to pay us. So, okay, but here we go. All right. So in Cinema 4D, I've got a plane, I've got a cylinder. The cylinder has a sphere on top of it. We have a force called wind. The wind is being angled kind of upwards, pushing up into the flag. And all I'm doing here, this is some real bare bones stuff, right? I'm simulating flag, which it looks, Kyle, we have to admit, this looks like a flag, right?
It does look like a flag, and it looks like it's blowing.
Yeah. Now, it's not a lot to write home about because the computer's doing a lot of the lifting. We just have to set up the scene so that we can blow the wind and so that the flag will behave flagly, right? Now, a lot of that is done in Cinema 4D by dropping attributes on things. So this plane, for example, is holding the tag of the cloth tag. So we say this plane is cloth, and it has the belt tag. Now, the belt tag allows you to select a bunch of points, right, on here, and then say, hey, you're a belt now. And that belt is attached to that cylinder. So if we look at this, and we say show, all these ones that are highlighted in yellow, those have been belted onto the cylinder. So they stick, right? So that's a thing that we're saying is
Just
true
like the
about
pinning that we were doing in After Effects.
Yeah, and just like my belt on a very hot day. So we then come into the cloth tag, which has been applied, and we're really just using the surface information. So we're giving it like a bendiness of 5, so it's kind of bendy. This is kind of a starchy flag. If you increase that number, it gets more and more floopy, like it has less structure to it. But a nice low number is fine for my purposes because, again, I don't want this to behave like a real flag. I want it to behave like a flag that looks good. this is kind of that photographing food principle.
Yeah.
Where pretty much all the food you see in commercials is not food. You can't eat it because it's glue.
Yeah.
You've been lied to. Wake up, people.
That's what it takes to look delicious. If you saw the real thing, it would look gross.
Yeah, when I want to look delicious, I cover myself in glue. So here we've got bendiness, stretchiness, bounciness, friction. I've zeroed pretty much all of them out. Thickness is how thick we believe the plane to be. This plane is actually no thickness, so we're just making some up using the cloth modifier here. The target length is an interesting one, because right now it's going to try to remain at the length that it started. You can see that it's actually starting to get like bent and twisted and pulled, right? But if I jack that up, I can let the flag kind of billow out, and you see how it's kind of pinched up here because of the belt. So it's like it's more like a skirt, right? This is a real petticoat situation, and we can tighten it up like that as well if we want it to be a bit more of an elasticized type of deal. Anyway,
fix it, make it right.
Yeah. Do it good. Okay, so oh, sorry, I pinched it too much and now the cloth is sticking together. Oopsie doodle, I better go back. So the mass, though, the mass here is important because we're simulating wind blowing into it. So the mass is down at like 0.2. The wind is jacked way up at 200. It comes in at like 5. But if we were at 5, it would be pretty milquetoast.
Right. And you don't want a flag that's just all droopy and sad. It needs to be flying proudly.
Exactly. Yes. We want it really true north strong and free. So that's why we're really blowing it out. But what's really nice about this type of thing, like the flagness, this is just a texture. Put whatever picture on it you want, right? Like once you've got the thing set up, that's it. You're done. You're done, right? It's doing the thing you want. However, Kyle, I do not like things that are real. I'll admit it to you right now.
This explains so much.
Yeah. We're answering a lot of questions. Like, if I wanted to see a real flag, Kyle, I'd just go outside.
Nah.
I don't mean to brag or
Why don't you find a stock clip of that flag to look at?
I know.
That's
right?
close enough.
Why am I trying to be a stock clip of a flag? What am I doing to myself? So instead, I thought, oh wait, let's go to this one first. Let's go to this one. Let's go to my in-between state on this. I thought, well, what if I apply some of what we did inside of After Effects to this? I still want a flag that moves. I want the rest of the flag to seem to be responding to it, but I want absolute control of what that would be, right? So here I'm using a spline down on the ground, and I'm using the align to spline and the so we've got the align to spline and the spline wrap that are both referencing the same spline. So this flag is actually being conformed. It's being forced to go in this alignment, right? So this got me close. I was like, all right, this idea is kind of close. I can use a spline to control where that is. But this movement of a flag, I think we can all admit to ourselves and to each other that this is not good.
Well, right. But again, if you're going for that more graphical look, you could put a camera in the right spot and probably be very close to what you had been building in After Effects.
That's true. And like, depending on what you're going to do with it and the set dressing, and maybe we're making some kind of like Windows 95 patriotic screensaver that's supposed to like really identify that the user of that computer has 7 pleats in their khakis or something. Like, this is what we want to put on the screen. Anyway, I thought I can do you one better, right? So instead of starting with the movement of the flag, I was like, I need to start with the movement of the pole. The pole is what is important.
Because in here, you can really link all of that together properly because you have physics and
and it can all be like super dynamic. So I started with that spline again, right? And then I created this kind of pike here, and it's got this pyramidal top on it, which I thought would be useful. Well, we do come from a country founded by the people who could kill the most animals and sell
Mhm.
them back in Britain and take whatever they could get their hands on. Anyway, but we've got that, and I'm using the target tag. Now, the target points at something. So it's pointing at a sphere that is rolling around that track, right? So the pike here is affixed down here, but always pointing at that. So I've got the pole movement I want, right? I've got this very robotic waving of the flag going on, right? Almost as if whoever's waving it hasn't thought a lot about the actual meaning behind their actions and they're just kind of parroting what they see on TV. Oh, Kyle, we can get as political as we want on these shows. So, well, probably not. But
I mean, I feel like we have, but in an extremely vague way, which is great.
if you know, you know.
Mhm.
So in this thing, right? So I've got the poll going the way I want, right? That is 100%. That's the way I want it to be. So where does the flag factor into this, right? Well, the flag I know I want to be attached here and there on the pole. So I just put a couple of null kind of groupy objects, parented them within the pole group that's doing that movement, so it moves along that. And then you can use something called a tracer to follow where that went in 3D space. The results of that were what I call the high trace and the low trace here, that these are the splines created by the movement of that point on that object, right? It's a little bit heady, but right,
Yeah.
I'm using it to draw a 3D shape in space. And then those become what the plane will be spline wrapped between. So I can use this as a spline and a rail. And so because the movement of this is being controlled through space, I then just need to match this plane being wrapped to it. And I was really impressed with myself with how this came through.
Yeah.
Just with how kind of abstract it still kind of looks, right? This
Mhm.
is obviously no object can actually conform to what this is in
Right.
our reality, right? You would have to like cut the shape of this thing and it would have to stretch and deform to actually do this line.
To kind of retrace what you said, essentially you created a track at the top and a track at the bottom, and they're
Yep,
not the same. and
exactly.
and so it's as if the end of the open end of the flag had like two little rings, and it was following around two wires.
Exactly. And then we just extrapolate that idea, right, along every rib of this
Mhm.
thing going vertically because this everything's just made out of vertices, right? So it's all just conforming along that path. Anyway, this is my favorite one of the mix.
That's neat.
I don't know, Kyle. Do you have any more things, or should we ask the good
I,
people to
I don't have
vote?
any more things.
Okay,
Would not that you need to go down this rabbit hole, but
sure.
could you then take the cloth sim and
Mm.
give this an additional? I don't know, if that clashes with this build, or if then you could give it an additional little bit of waviness on top of the movement here.
I mean, I'll just hit save and we'll see what happens.
There you go.
So we would come down to simulation. We're going to add cloth to it, right? And the thing I think is going to happen. Oh, it doesn't just drop out. Okay, now this might be. Nope, there it goes.
Right. That's the
So
problem when you start applying physics. Is
yeah, so one thing must take priority over the
yeah.
other things, and unfortunately, the cloth is going to make it drop out. I would need to basically hang the cloth off of something that's kind of going around. Now, if we wanted to say, I want this plane to be like, I need this to be a little bit realer, right? Like,
Mhm.
let's get some variation in that.
Yeah.
We would probably use a deformer of some kind, and we could use a displacer on this thing. And the displacer, we just need to load in some noise.
Looks
So
like
as
the
you,
exact idea that Scott asked about a minute ago.
oh, did he?
Basically,
Crud.
can there be an equivalent of wiggle in C4D to apply to the spline?
Right. Okay. So there's actually a few when we think about like what wiggle do. So the displacer is one way of doing that, right? We're displacing geometry in space. We can also vibrate properties right? Like our position and our rotation and stuff like that. So there are a number of methods that we would use to sort of bring that forward, depending on what the specific thing is that we want to deform. So if we wanted to deform these paths, we would need to displace them. So that would be a displacement function. Now, the other thing that I think is worth mentioning there, right? If this leading edge is disrupted, it's not going to connect to the pole anymore. So it's a little bit harder to say, I only want to disrupt the back end of this. But what we could do, right? Let's go back. Let's put the displacer back. Hey, go back to that displacer. Right? And it's, again, so the shading here is being taken over with noise. Well, we can also say, hey, give me a field on this, right? And as you can see, this field is saying how much and of what is being totally borked up by that. So that could then be linked to the pole clunk, and then it's going for a ride around like this as well. So we've got options, man. We got all the options in the world. Sometimes we have too many options. There's a lot of systems. Actually, there's a lot of systems and everything. I don't know why I'm making it sound like this is particularly different.
Of course, that at least from what I can see, it looks like a consistent displacement that is just fixed in place. So it's like you're waving a solid but very crinkly flag.
Well, and there's a lot of ways you can kind of change that, right? So this fractal itself could be animated.
Right.
But then there's also, what is that fractal relative to? We could make that fractal relative to the object that's moving. We could make it relative to the universe it's in. So it's like the flag's actually being dragged through a displacement jelly, I guess, to think about. Anyway, look, there's a lot of things to think about and to do and etc. And if you want to dissect them even more, get the work files and enjoy those.
Alternate title, the one where they talk about displacement jelly.
Exactly. However, we should probably try to rank these things in some way before we sign off.
Well, it's even more examples than I expected. So it's hard to rank.
I'm not gonna lie, Kyle. Some of them were pretty cheap. They were pretty low effort examples.
But again, like my flag, for example.
Right.
Sometimes you just need that thing in the background to have some life, and it literally took 2 layers, and you could probably build it in about 20 seconds.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of times where that's fine. You don't need to have a realistic waving flag.
Exactly.
Look,
I think what's really interesting about this is like the more abstracted I got, the harder it became, right? So like even in Cinema 4D, the simulation one took no time at all. The ones that were getting more stylized, that are getting further away from a prescriptive methodology, right? That's when things are getting way more different. So anyway, but yeah, I don't know.
When you had to start keyframing manually, frame by frame, to get it to follow.
But I think those are the most, like, not this one. My favorite one out of these, if I were to say which one is my favorite one is the warp effects one. This one, I think, is actually the one that I kind of like the most. Like the whipping back and forth, like this one's very charming as well, right? Like this type of thing, I rank that as one of the top in terms of style. In terms of ease of use, I put it at the bottom, right?
Right.
This is the most labor intensive, but it's also the hardest one to. If someone had notes on this, oh boy, right? You're
starting over, basically.
Yeah, because some of the steps, some of the processes are irreversible, right? There's a lot of manual keyframes involved in this. So I don't know, personal favorite, and I would learn to hate it if someone came back and said, do differently now.
I mean, sometimes, certain things, that's kind of what you get.
Exactly. I don't know, Kyle. I'm sorry. And of yours, Kyle, I'm going to say the blueberries are my favorite.
They're my favorite too. I liked the way that I was able to get a very stop motion-y feel without the hassle of stop motion. So I have a feeling I'm going to kind of explore this technique some more and see what I can do with it.
Okay, well, I'm just going to write down fake stop motion on our
Yeah.
list of possible topics for the future because, like, I love stop motion animation. I think it's some of the most charming and interesting animation to observe. Fantastic Mr. Fox, Wallace and Gromit,
Mhm.
like the that one that's birds. What is that? The Christmas Robin thing. Like all of those things are super charming. I could never do that because I will someday die, and I am aware of my own mortality
Yeah.
all the time.
You
So,
need a very specific setup, and more often than not, you actually need a lot of to do anything sort of advanced, you need a lot of these kind of intricate little rigs that hold the
mm,
things up from the back in ways that are mostly hidden, but you have to paint out later. And it's
yeah,
very, very painstaking. And if you mess anything up, then you kind of have to start over.
yeah.
Um,
If anyone's familiar with Kevin Perry
mhm.
out of Toronto, he does a lot of really interesting stuff. A lot of very branded experiences, but a lot of blending of like people and stop motion stuff that he does, all out of his basement. But this is someone who is,
Knows what
you
he's
know,
doing.
well, he was on Kubo
Uh huh.
and those types of movies that are like, so those are some next level stuff that you'll
Right.
see. But also, I was going to say, like, a lot of people who do it really well have a kind of intuition about,
Yeah.
I don't know. I personally, I don't think I can do straight ahead stuff, right? Straight ahead and pose to pose being
Hard.
the
Yeah.
different types of keyframing. Like, I don't have the confidence to say I know where this is going. I don't need to plan where I'm going. I can feel where this is going to go. Like I feel the gaps between the movement and what I want. No way. No way.
And honestly, I when I started this blueberry example, I did kind of explore, um, frame by frame keyframing each blueberry, and then I kind of realized like that's probably not necessary.
Yeah.
And if I do something that gives them just a little bit of rotation, that'll kind of give them a little bit of life. And the low frame rate, like it's not
Hmm.
exactly stop motion, but you could go totally frame by frame here and have that degree of control. But I almost think that would be too much control and it would be too perfect because the
Right.
imperfections are part of what makes stop motion charming. It's a little bit of a rabbit hole here.
Yeah. Like add a few inconsistencies on position, maybe a few outliers on scale, right? Just to be
Yeah.
like, oh, I fouled that one up. Oopsie doodle. But if a lot of when I see it kind of faked in 3D programs, they're using a lot of like fingerprint
Yeah.
texture that's subtly deforming the model enough every other frame. Oh yeah, and it's Leica. That's like the dog that was blasted into space. So,
Excellent studio that has made pretty much all of the really great stop motion things that you think of in the last 10, 15 years
yeah, it's
at
them and
all.
Aardman.
But
Like
yeah,
I can't think of a third. Anyway, Kyle, we better say goodbye to these people. This has been an extra long show. I hope people
it
enjoyed it.
has.
Um,
But we got to show some cool stuff, and we didn't have to have a hard stop and feel all rushed, which was nice. So,
well, that's true, but also I don't think there's anything else really going on. But we get to really dominate the airwaves out here. Thanks everyone for watching, which is great.
yeah,
Yeah, like we say, if you want to get 15% off at Plug and Play, go to plugandplay.app, hotline 15. Give Kyle and Evan a kickback. It was very nice. And
give
then I
yourself
don't
a
know.
kickback because you get a discount.
Give yourself a kickback. Enjoy our files, motiondesignhotline.com for all of our archive. Watch all of our stuff. Tell people about it.
You know
Well,
what else? Crucially, we should plug.
okay. Oh,
And
oh,
if she's still here,
yeah.
Annika would be very happy about this. Guess what is now available for sale if you are so inclined? You have to guess. We're not going to tell you.
Yeah, there's no way to communicate. All right, folks. That's it. Bye for now. Find us on social media. EC Abrams in all the places. Now on Blue Sky and Kylosaurus Rex. Okay. Well, Kyle, I'll see you in a while, and I guess we'll see you next week. I guess
Yeah,
we'll let you know. Follow us in the
probably.
places.
Yeah.
All right. Bye for now, everybody. Do I have an out?
Thanks, everyone.
I still do have an out button. Okay.